Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast with Ani and Brian. Join us as we explore the art and science of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools to strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional. Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you'll understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence. If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. Hey, Brian.
Hi, Ani.
I'm really excited in episode 9 here to be talking about the 3 lanes of somatic training, because people talk to us all the time about the power of somatics. They're like, somatic's so cool, or I've had different kinds of somatic work in my life, and I really want to do this with people. People feel really called to somatic work. And we talk with people all the time who feel the call, feel the pull, feel the desire to do somatic work. And they actually don't understand that there are different lanes of somatic training. So they find us on the internet, but they don't even really know what they're looking for sometimes. So we're going to flush that out today so that you know better kind of like what lane you want to go in so that you can do this powerful work with people.
Right. Yeah. So even assuming that someone knows that somatic means working with the body, right? We're really talking about these different lanes of working with people's soma, with their bodies. What I like about this conversation too, Ani, is it allows people who feel like they are stuck in the first lane. It gives them an opportunity to expand into other lanes when they have permission to do that and training to do that.
Yeah, I agree, because both of us kind of did that to a certain degree. Yeah.
Yep.
So we should probably talk about that first lane.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first lane. What is it?
Body working. So the distinction with the first lane of somatics is that you put hands on with somebody.
Yep.
Now I'm going to say something kind of funny here for a second, because sometimes the somatic practitioner actually like hovers their hands over top of the body.
Sure.
But technically you could have put your hands on. Like it's something you do with your hands. You're affecting a person's energy system and or tissue with your hands. It's body working.
Right. So think about massage therapists, shiatsu practitioners,
manual
acupressure, acupuncture to some degree, if you're doing the needling.
Reiki practitioners, craniosacral therapists. Actually, that's a good one. A bunch of people do that. Did we say myofascial release? Yeah.
Myofascial release.
All kinds of stuff. So
huge value, by the way.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool.
The hands-on somatic lane.
Yes.
It's like so important, so needed. Yes, yes, yes.
Sometimes I talk with people who are potential students and I ask them, what kind of somatics do you want to do? And they don't know. And I describe these 3 lanes and they're like, I want to be a hands-on practitioner. Yay.
Yep.
So know that for yourself. If you want to be a hands-on practitioner, we're not the place to come study because we don't do hands-on work. But there are lots of different places that you can study. And, just to take a little bit of a sidetrack on this lane for a second and talk about it, there's some really different ways you can do it. You can go into things like massage therapy, or you could go into energy work. You can go into education that requires you to get a long certification, like a massage therapy certification takes a certain amount of time, maybe a year or something like that. Or you can get, and you can get these, 1 day, 2 day, half day, 4 days, 1 week trainings that you can develop even more skill and ability within the context. So from an educational standpoint, there are a lot of different ways to approach this. There's a lot of different price points when you're doing somatic body working. And I think one distinction I do like to make with people, Brian, is that very oftentimes, and we both came from this background, when you're doing those kinds of somatic body working education training programs, somatic training programs, they're not really teaching you how to grow your business most of the time.
Right. Yeah.
So when we talk with potential students and they say, I want help growing my business, you are very likely, if you're doing the hands-on lane going to also need to invest in some kind of probably coaching or consulting to grow your business as well.
Right. Yeah. And again, we both have a lot of training, a lot of years under our hands, if you will,
Yeah,
and
really.
doing these practices for a really, really long time. And if you haven't checked out one of our very first podcasts on how we grew our own development through somatic coaching, you might want to check that out, because we tell our story of how we moved from being hands-on manual practitioners into somatic coaches, really, into learning somatic coaching skills. And this is something that we definitely see with people who spend a lot of time working hands-on with their clients, is they're doing really great hands-on work. And I actually just had a conversation last week with a massage therapist that was at a training that I was doing on this topic exactly. And I asked her, I said, so when you're doing massage therapy with stuff, how often does stuff come up on the table for people that you do not know how to deal with?
Oh my
And she's like,
gosh,
all the time. And I said, well, that's a great, perfect segue to go into learning some somatic coaching skills, because something comes up for somebody. And when something comes up for someone, like, that is the opportunity. The door is open, the window is open, actually really help to heal what the person's got going on that's associated with the exact reason that they're coming to see the massage therapist. So rather than coming back week after week after week after week after week, when that thing comes up and you can actually help someone to go deeper into that, it actually basically heals that causation of the reason the person's coming into massage therapy. So massage therapy and hands-on work is so important to begin to start breaking down the layers of the defense mechanisms for stuff that's going on within people's physiology, than to help them grow from.
Yeah, it just reminds me, like, everybody should be a coach. Like, your neighborhood bartender should be a coach. Your neighborhood hairdresser should be a coach, because these are people who hear about the stories of people's lives, and they hear about what people want to achieve and the problems that people are going through. And everybody should have coaching skills. Now, massage therapists and manual practitioners and things like that, I think, should also have coaching skills for the reason that you're talking about.
Yep.
And you should have somatic coaching skills.
Yeah. Because you're already
practitioner.
working in the body with people. And when you know how to use somatic coaching skills, and you actually have somatic training around that, you can actually ask deeper, more relevant questions of a person, because you're already used to kind of navigating someone's inner spaces with them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just want to kind of feed in that little bit right there. That first lane of somatic training is so critically important. And it doesn't have to be the end of your journey, because there's so much more that you can do, especially as, and we've both seen this too, manual therapists get older and their hands start to not work so well. You want a retirement plan, you're whatever.
Or you just want to grow your business, because there's kind of a glass ceiling, or
there certainly is a ceiling because you're only so many hours a day of how many people and so much energy to be able to perform it.
Yeah. And you can expand your business and your possibilities when you learn somatic coaching. And I am a strong advocate, actually, for people who are somatic hands-on practitioners to go get more somatic training in the lane of somatic coaching, and not necessarily somatic therapeutics, which is the second lane we're going to talk about. And you might be like, well, why? Because I'm already kind of in the therapeutic realm. So I'll give you my take on that.
Okay. So now we're in the second lane. Lane 2 is somatic.
Let's get into lane 2.
Therapeutics.
Somatic therapeutics.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, Brian, in order to talk about somatic therapeutics, I want to talk about lane 2 and 3 kind of at the same time. Okay. So lane 3 is somatic coaching. And I think it's actually easier to talk about when you do a little compare and contrast.
Okay. So we're just going to put our blinker on back and forth between the lanes. So just as long as we know where the blinker is, then we'll know which lane we're talking about.
We're going back and forth here.
Okay.
So when you're in a somatic therapeutic or a somatic coaching session, when you're like in the middle of it, if you just kind of chunked out a little piece of each of those sessions, you might look at those videos and think, dang, they look really similar. They do. However, the beginning and the end of those sessions is very different. The beginning is like in a somatic coaching lane. What goals do you want to achieve? What would you like to grow in your life? And you're having those kinds of conversations to start a session or start a series of sessions with a person. Whereas in the somatic therapeutic lane, you're probably having more of a conversation about what you'd like to heal. So that's the beginning of the session and how that's kind of different. The end of the session, I can speak from personal experience on this one because I've had a lot of somatic therapeutics. Anyway, the end of the session can look very different because the end of a somatic coaching session, you're really looking for action steps. You're looking for what the person's going to do, what they're going to, how they're going to progress towards their goal. And at the end of a somatic therapeutic session, they end the session and the session is done. I remember as a somatic coach, being in a somatic therapeutic session, having a great session and getting to the end and being like, now what? You left me hanging. And I'm not dissing somatic therapeutics because it is awesome. It's so great. It's such powerful work. But there is a real distinction between the fact that you're doing healing for healing's sake in a somatic therapeutic session, and you're doing the somatic work to help somebody to become or achieve or to have or to do something even greater in their life with somatic coaching.
So some of this, Ani, comes back to just the difference between coaching and therapy.
Yeah.
Right. So can you talk a little bit to that? Like, what's the fundamental difference between coaching and therapy?
Well, I think in terms of the conversation that's had in the coaching world around the difference, very oftentimes people say that the difference between coaching and therapy is that therapists deal with emotions and, coaches don't necessarily get into emotional content. That's not true.
Or possible.
Necessarily, or possible. Yeah, because coaches every day get into emotional content. But a big difference, again, in that conversation between coaching and therapeutics is that coaches would work with somebody in, your kind of everyday person who's functioning well enough to get themselves dressed, get themselves up, go to work. Whereas a therapist is probably helping somebody who can't get themselves to do their daily living kinds of things. They can't hold a job. Maybe they have a bunch of addictive tendencies or things like that, or they have diagnoses. Now, all of that is kind of, Brian, I think out there in the world, kind of, theoretical, and people are musing in terms of the somatic training track that you choose. I think one of the biggest things that people actually have to think about, like practically, when it comes to the difference between somatic therapeutics and somatic coaching is what kind of clients are you going to be working with? And can you do that in your state the way that you really want to? Because, we could be talking about in terms of the therapeutic lane, a regulated profession kind of conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
So just to, talk about what that means for a second, there are certain professions in certain states that are licensed professions. You have to have a license to be able to do that. And it runs through the State Department of Education.
Yeah.
And when you're thinking about what track you want to take for somatics, for your somatic training, I really think you should think about what kind of work you want to be doing with what kind of clients at the end. Because a lot of the people who talk to us, they think they want to go into somatic therapeutics because they want to help people heal. But when we really talk to them, they want to be able to have the flexibility of doing work as a coach, because coaching is not regulated. And you can do work in different sectors, like you can go into schools, you can do it in conjunction with your consulting practice or your expert-based business. You can see clients without, doctors kinds of stuff getting all mixed up, because it's an unregulated profession.
Yeah. And with that said, people are kind of getting hip to that a little bit, Ani. I mean, at some point it could be regulated, let's just say, because anything that is making money in the world, someone will find some way to regulate. That's one thing. The other thing is, actually, there are so many coaches out there now, and some of them have training and some of them don't have training, that consumers of coaching services are getting a little more wise to asking how their coaches have been trained. Because if I'm
Absolutely.
going to hire you, where did you get your training?
Yep.
Who did you train with? Those sorts of things. So even though it's not regulated, consumers are still asking those kinds of questions. So the idea that you could be a massage therapist, for instance, and have somatic training to do hands-on work, and then just start to kind of wing coaching on the side, like you are not going to get the type of results, number one, that
Yeah.
someone who's trained in somatic coaching will get. And number two, if you were asked about why are you doing what you're doing, you wouldn't have an answer around that. So consumers are getting more wise to that. So it's really important to have a really reputable training program as a part of what you've done, and a really good reputable somatic coaching or somatic therapeutic training program will have processes that you learn. Actually, you'll learn a process. You won't just go in and learn theory and like, oh, the magic of how the body mind is connected. I mean, I love that. I mean, I can just spin off into how amazing the body mind physiology is and somatic physiology is. And at the same time, I can have all that information and not be able to turn it into something useful for somebody else.
Mhm.
But when you can take that information and actually hone it into a process, that's what becomes really, really critical to be able to do. So even though coaching is unregulated, therapeutics is regulated. You got to have the cred behind you to be able to do this stuff really, really well and
Absolutely.
ethically,
Yeah.
in a no harm kind of way.
Absolutely. And one of the things we see, Brian, with prospective students is they actually have quite a bit of training in somatic therapeutics, but they don't have the training in coaching and they don't know how to translate it.
Yeah.
And they've already gotten so much training. They're like, oh, I don't want to have to go back and get another certification, but you didn't learn yet the coaching methodology. And so if you think you want to become a coach, go for the somatic coaching lane.
Yeah, right.
Because that way you're not going to have to then go get a coaching certification after you get a somatic therapeutic certification from your somatic training
Yeah.
in that regard.
One other little distinction I want to make between therapy and coaching too, Ani, because we both come out of the therapeutic world, right?
Mhm.
You were trained as an occupational therapist. I was trained as a physical therapist, like many decades ago, and
A long,
long
time
time ago. And as a part of being a therapist, like you would get a patient, and I would get a patient that was somehow, like you said, not able to live on their own. They weren't able to walk. They weren't able to feed themselves. They weren't able to do this or that sort of thing. And then we would see them. And then when they were able to do that thing, they got discharged.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't matter if they were able to do that thing really well. It didn't matter if they were able to do that thing sustainably independently. It just all of a sudden you met a marker and the insurance company said, you did it. Goodbye. Bring in the next person who is having trouble getting back to baseline. So a big thing around therapeutics is getting people back to baseline. And after they're at baseline, they're just kind of go off on their own into some void. I don't know. I would always think about, well, where do people go? And I see them in the parking lot of the grocery store later on and have to catch up with them. And they'd say something like, I'm still struggling. I wish I could come back and see you, but my insurance won't pay for it because I'm able to go to work, but all this blah, 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 blah stuff. And this is where coaching actually goes from baseline beyond, right? So coaching is about growth. It's about growing beyond the baseline experience. It's about experiencing life that is more fulfilling, more generous, more open, more freely expressed, more everything. Like that's where coaching goes, is kind of beyond that therapeutic paradigm. Now it's important. Both of those are really, really important. I want to say, like, we're not saying one's better than the other, but I think what Ani's pointing out is you have to know for you. You have to know for you, where is your sweet spot? Do you want to help people primarily kind of get back to baseline, or do you want to help people go beyond baseline into creating more growth and expansiveness in their life? That's really a big difference.
And please think about how you want to be working with clients when you're done, because the difference between the coaching world and the therapeutic world is very different in terms of that. For one thing, the investment in the somatic trainings that are in the somatic therapeutic lane are usually a little less than in the somatic coaching lane. Usually the investment in a somatic coaching program is more than a somatic therapeutic. One of the reasons why is because somatic coaches tend to demand or can demand greater rates. We have students who are doing engagements from $100 to a few $1,000s, $4,000 programs, $10,000 programs. We have people who are closing multiple six-figure organizational deals who have somatic coaching as a part of it. So the trajectory of the amount of your ROI and your return on investment for how much you're going to make back can tend to be even larger in the coaching lane.
Yes.
And another thing about that is that traditionally in the somatic therapeutic lane, the therapeutic world doesn't talk a lot about business building, where traditionally the coaching world does. So traditionally, you're going to have more conversation about business, building your business, working with business people, doing business in the coaching world. Now, even if you don't want to have anything to do with working with people in business, let's say that you want to do life coaching, relationship coaching, health coaching, or something like that, you still need to know how to work your business and grow your business.
Right. Yeah.
And there's more conversation about that typically in the somatic coaching lane, for certain at the Somatic Coaching Academy, because we really pride ourselves in our business building with our students.
Yeah. So when you're kind of considering your kind of level of somatic training, these are all the things that you want to take into consideration to make a decision that is going to feel really fulfilling and growth orienting for you.
So which one's right for you in terms of somatic training? Is it hands-on Somatic Therapeutics, or is it Somatic Coaching Academy? We hope, of course, that you choose Somatic Coaching Academy. And if you're interested in talking more to help you to come to a decision about whether somatic coaching is right for you, have a call with our team. That's why we're here. And for now, we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself. Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.